Great. Hello, all. As you trickle in bright and early, thank you so much for joining us. I know that I've got my Dunkin' Donuts right next to me. I hope you have a cup of hot or cold coffee of your choice. We'll give folks just a minute or so to trickle on in, and then we'll dive into this virtual workshop. Okay, we'll just give it till 8:02 and then we will dive in. If you know somebody who is intending to be here and you don't see them, maybe because they're still getting to their desk chair, give them a nudge. They can join at any time.
It might be lost in the fog.
Yes, very, very lost in the fog. Very foggy here in Boston. So thank you for coming if you've journeyed to get here. Perfect. Okay, well, why don't we dive in with this credit and scheme and fraud prevention virtual workshop? Just a reminder that this is also part of a series that you can attend if you would like to. We have another session coming up next Wednesday, November 2nd at 10 a.m., a little bit later for you. And I'll drop that link in the chat. Make sure it's in the follow-up email in case you are interested in our mobile banking virtual workshop. So thank you for coming to this one. We'll just start here and explain a little bit about the Office of Economic Empowerment in case you've never heard of us, we understand. Then we'll dive into a great welcome video. Then we'll dive into the meat of the workshop, which is going to be great. And then we'll have time over for a Q&A. And let me just say, if you do have any questions during the presentation, please do feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can see if we want to address them then or at the end for the Q&A. So just a little bit about the Office of the Economic Empowerment, the OEE. We're a department with the Massachusetts State Treasury. We offer free and accessible financial education. Our goal is to make sure that all walks of life have great access to empowering tools like wage equity and children's savings accounts. So here we will go ahead and watch this video. Please give me a thumbs up if it works for you, Dutch.
Hello. My name is Elizabeth Chen. It is my honor to serve as the Secretary of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs. We call it EOEA. At EOEA, we are committed to ensuring older adults and their caregivers have options to live and thrive in the communities of their choice. And that includes ensuring they have the financial ability to do so. I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this money management training that's offered to the Aging Services Network. We know there are a variety of factors that contribute to an individual's economic situation, including wages, inflation, and emergencies. In this training, you will learn about budgeting, credit management, and fraud prevention. These are helpful tools when navigating one's professional and personal life with economic security. Thank you again for participating, and I hope you find today's training helpful and informative.
Fantastic. That was a great, great welcome message from the Secretary. We are excited and eager to dive into those topics, especially if you've seen that before. It's always a returning hit to see that. I think we're going to pass the torch over to Dutch and the M&T Bank team to go ahead and dive into the presentation. And thank you again, Dutch, for presenting today.
Well, good morning and thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm echoing Jessica's words. I really appreciate that you all took the time to get up early on a foggy day, cold, cloudy day. It feels like fall. It feels like one of those days you just want to kind of stay in bed and cuddle in, and you all decided to join me and my colleague Jordan from M&T Bank to talk about credit scores, credit reporting, and then also lead into some information around identity theft and scam prevention. So again, much appreciated. My name is Dutch Koltoff. I work for M&T Bank. I'm their Financial Empowerment Officer together with my colleague Jordan. And we're truly excited to be able to be partnering with both the Office of Economic Empowerment as well as the Executive Office of Elder Affairs to talk about financial education. The last few years, the pandemic truly has highlighted the need for financial education. and the ability for us to share some resources, to share some tips that hopefully you can put into action on a daily basis for yourself and your family, as well for the elderly community that you work with, is truly something that we appreciate. There's a couple of things I want to mention before we dive into the actual content. Just like the video mentioned, we're hoping that the knowledge and the tools that you receive today will help you empower working with the vulnerable populations, but also that you can use them yourself with your families in your role as home care workers and supporters of the elder community. They're great resources that we're going to share, but there's also fantastic resources available already to you through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So please make sure that after today you take a look at their website, share some ideas with your colleagues, and truly make sure that all the resources that are available to you are also actively implemented on a daily basis. These are tips, these are resources, these are trainings, these are workshops. And even though both Jordan and myself are bankers, I just want to make sure that you understand that these trainings are not designed to turn you into financial experts or financial advisors or offer you any type of certification. It's truly just a sharing of ideas and strategies. And if you have any specific scenarios for yourself or the elderly community, please make sure to visit trusted financial experts and advisors to review your scenario, your family scenario, and truly anybody that you feel could take advantage of some of the resources that are available. We have a pretty full agenda, but we do have the chat open, and throughout the presentation, if I mention some links or some resources, both Jordan and Jessica might share those in the chat, and hopefully we'll also have a chance to open up the chat or the Q&A later in the presentation, and then go from there. So those are all the initial goals, objectives, Q&A. Let's dive into the subject. And again, today we're going to talk about credit scores, credit reporting, and then kind of move over to identity theft and protection. And before we get started in the agenda, I'll say we'll start with a quick poll. Get everybody up and running, little exercise, and answer to a poll. How well do you know your credit score? Do you know it exactly? Do you have a pretty rough idea? You have no idea what it is, or even worse, you've never even heard of a credit score. So do me a favor, take a second and fill out our survey. How well do you know your credit or your credit score? Exactly, rough idea, don't know it. I don't know what a credit score is. Thank you. And Jessica, if you can just share. And I'll give you an understanding. Oh, good to hear. 50-50 when it comes to having a good understanding on what's available on the credit score or actually knowing it very clearly. So I'm happy to see that. And I'll tell you why that's an important question right at the beginning. As you can probably hear, I was born and raised in the Netherlands. And one of the reasons that I'm so interested in financial education, when I first came to the States 25, 26, 27 years ago, as a 21-year-old fellow, I fell in love with a lady from New Hampshire. Credit scores and credit reporting was one of the most difficult things for me to learn about and to get used to. And the reason that I'm so interested in financial education, because I probably made any mistake you can possibly imagine when it comes to credit score and credit rating specifically. When I initially moved into the States, pretty much every retail store I walked into offered me the chance to apply, and I just applied everywhere I could, not realizing that that could actually hurt a credit score. And I also did not understand how important a credit score and the credit history could be on other facets in life. And especially if you're younger, late teens, early 20s, just starting a family, there's certain life events where credit scores and credit ratings can be quite important. And it's important to understand that from very early on, you need to manage that and you need to take a good look at it. So a credit score in general, as you might know, is a 3-digit rating that tells the lender how likely you are to repay a debt. And the rating goes anywhere from under 580 over to 800 to 850. There's different agencies that use different reporting, but most of the time we categorize a credit score as anywhere in the range from poor to exceptional based on some of the scores and some of the ratings that you see. Calculating a credit score has a few different components. And how do you get a credit score over 800? What makes up a great credit score? And you can kind of see here on the graph, and this is truly one of the most important slides probably in the whole presentation, but you'll see that there's a very large impact on 2 categories specifically, the amounts owned as well as your payment history. So how much of your total credit that's available to you is outstanding? How much do you owe in debt? If you have a $10,000 credit card and you have $9,000 in outstanding debt, obviously that's a very large amount of credit that is being used on a regular basis. And banks take a look at that to see, okay, if all of that is available and there would be an emergency, or if all of that is already being used and you're applying for new credit, how would your ability to then pay this new credit varied on the amount that you already have owed? The second part that then becomes part of it is the payment history. If you have large amount of credit outstanding, or if you have multiple credit cards that you could have large amounts of credit outstanding, have you been able in the past to pay those outstanding debts on time? So 35% is your payment history, and it traces back up to 7 years. So up to 7 years, banks and other lenders, and I'm just going to use bank as a general statement, probably in the rest of the presentation, but they look at 35% as an indicator of you making payments on time. So having a late payment, not making a payment on time, truly has a huge impact on your overall credit score and is one of the highest indicators. The length of credit history. If a bank feels that all of a sudden you're applying for a lot of new credit cards, which is what happened to me when I first came to the States, banks might wonder, hey, if there's something happening in the financial life of this person that we're not aware of, why all of a sudden are there different pieces of information that this person is trying to get access to? We don't really have a long history of somebody paying their credit on time, so we might be a little bit more hesitant to offer new credit if we don't see that there's been a longer amount of credit history for amounts owed, for lines owed, and for payments being made, which then leads into new credit. And if we don't have a lot of long history, how much of your current credit is new? And often when we talk to, I have teenagers getting ready for college, often when we talk to younger people about establishing credit, we recommend to kind of start with maybe 1 or 2 secured cards or a car loan, build up a history on that newer credit before you jump into multiple cards. Which brings you to the last point, types of credit. Are all your debts credit cards or lines of credits where you have the ability to pay and then reuse the item, which means that often based on an interest rate, there's a smaller minimum payment to pay? Or do you also have installment loans, car loans? Is there mortgages? Is there personal loans where often there's a larger payment needed every month, but there's a fixed term and the line or loan will disappear? So 5 different pieces that make up a credit score. And just one thing I just noticed, you can also see that People's United Bank is still on this slide. If you haven't heard the name M&T Bank before, I probably should have mentioned it in the beginning, but M&T Bank acquired People's United Bank in our state. And as of September 6th, you should have seen the People's United Bank logo slowly disappearing and moving into the M&T Bank. So note for myself to fix that for the next time. So that makes up the credit score. Those are the different items you can see on a credit score and that are available to you. Move on to the next slide. How do we then get our credit score? And it seems that you have a good understanding for this already. But there's 3 different credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, that give you access to their score. And frankly, more and more, especially since the pandemic, there's more and more companies that give access to a score. I have 2 different credit cards that every month allow me to access my credit report and my credit score directly from their agencies. But these 3 companies, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, are the 3 reporting agencies where most of the financial institutions transfer their payment information and their history information to. And these 3 agencies are normally used by the different banks to look at somebody's credit report and credit history. You have the ability to check your reports directly from these agencies. You can also check your score directly from the agency. And the difference between a score and report is something we'll come up in just a second. But if you wanted to find the information, if you wanted to take a look at your credit bureau reporting and your credit score, there's actually a website you can go to, and it's called annualcreditreport.com. And you have the ability to go there and receive the report completely for free. So if you don't have a credit card, or if you don't have another financial institution that offers you access to your score or your report, you have the ability to get them directly from the agencies. Before the pandemic, you were able to get your report once, each of them once a year for free. So pretty much every 4 months you could pull a different report. Since the pandemic, you can do it more often. There's no charge to be able to get your reporting. So you have a good indication of what is being reported on you in your history. Based on your credit report, which is a snapshot, a certain score is then assigned to you, and that score is then determined to see if you are credit worthy and if we as a bank should give you a new loan. So here's that website, annualcreditreport.com. Sign up for it. It's going to ask you some information around payment history that only you would know. It might ask you for the last 4 digits of your social, and you have the ability to take a look at your report directly. You can download it onto a computer. You can print it out, and it gives you a good history of everything that happened with you personally. It shows some work history. It shows some address information, just a good reporting of anything financially that was reported in your name with the 3 agencies. Anytime that you apply for a loan, if you need to apply for welfare in case of reported fraud, you also have the ability to get this directly from the website. But like I said, since the pandemic, they've made it pretty accessible, and they've tried to make sure that anybody who wants to take a look at the credit report could take a look. And this is also something that you could bring up with the elderly populations and the people you support. Hopefully, they're in a part of their life and a stage of their life that they don't have to apply for new credit often, but the elderly population is very often victims of identity theft, and we'll talk about it in a minute, and scams around financial education. So it might be important for your elderly population to, at least on a regular basis, take a look at the credit report and make sure that there is no fraud reported, make sure that nothing is wrong on the report. The report gives information on public records. The report gives information on your personal life, name, social, address. It talks about the different credit loans or lines that are opened. So what is the debt status? What is the total amount? What is the payment history? Normally it shows it for at least 2 years. And if there's a late payment or if there's a public record that is not advantage, it can show up to 7 years. But the other piece to look at, especially with your elderly partners, are credit inquiries, right? Let's make sure that in the past.
Hi, Dutch. It seems like we lost your video and your sound. I can definitely pull up that PowerPoint for you if you need.
I am unmuting myself. I think I'm back on sound.
You're definitely back on sound, and we can see you on video. We just need your screen sharing back.
All right. Thank you for checking so quickly. Let's find out what happened there. I blame the fog. Share screen to share.
Perfect. We're back on reading your credit report.
Appreciate that. Thanks for jumping in. So, and I was just quickly mentioning credit inquiries. It's important to look at your credit report, especially when you work with the elderly population, and just make sure that there is no company, that there's no organization, that there's no person that all of a sudden is trying to look into somebody's credit when you haven't tried to apply for anything. There's different type of inquiries. You might see cell phone agencies, you might be gas and electric even, you might see banks, existing credit cards might do an inquiry just to kind of make sure nothing really has changed, and that's okay. But you do want to make sure that there's no additional or new types of credit applications on a regular basis. Look at when your accounts were opened, look if there was any delinquency, do public records come up, and are the dates of credit requests. Again, if you didn't apply for any new credit, let's make sure that no new dates show up. And this is also important if you have some negative information that normally would show for 7 years, you might be close to having those fall off your credit, which would impact your credit score in a positive way. So if you know you're going to apply for new credits, you know you're going to apply for a mortgage, you have the idea to apply for a specific loan, and based on your credit report, you know that, let's say 2 months from now, an older negative history will disappear. Wait a couple of months for that negative account to disappear from your report before you apply for the new credit. You see something wrong on your credit report. If you're working with your elderly population, there's information on the credit report that shouldn't be there. There's a few ways to dispute these items. And they've actually made it much easier when you see here. So you could write a letter directly to the reporting agency, send it by certified mail, requesting a return receipt, and send an additional letter to the provider, like the credit card. Credit reporting bureaus are obligated by law to respond to you within 30 days. You have computer access, or if your senior citizen has computer access, you actually can also do a dispute right on the report. Normally, when you look online and you're on the agency's website, if there's an item that you want to dispute, you have the ability to dispute right online. You would just have to upload any type of document that would talk about, hey, this is why I'm disputing it. If there is information on your credit report that's negative, if you just have bad credit and you're looking to improve your credit, and it's not something you can dispute, it's just something that happened. And again, I'm a good example of that with applying for a lot of different cards and not realizing what payments I need to make. There's a few steps you would need to take to make sure that you repair your credit correctly. And it all starts with monitoring. So continue to look at your report, continue to look at your scores, and to continue to make sure that there is a positive trend on your credit report. Continue to pay your bills on time. The best way, because of the 35% history, is to start paying items on time on a regular basis. We always recommend setting up automated payments. Go to workshops, talk to advisors, talk to people that might have been in similar scenarios before about credit counseling. And most banks, a lot of financial institutions, have the ability to offer restart type of products, where, for instance, on a credit card, instead of applying for a credit card without any type of security, which is risky for a bank, you have the ability to apply for what they call a secured card, where you put some money in a savings account. Let's say $500 goes in a savings account, and that is then used as security to give you a secured card. You now have the ability to start making payments on time and build your history. There's no risk for the bank. There's really no risk for you. And at the end of the day, you have the ability to start showing a good history of payments. Okay? All these items, all these activities are linked to the Credit Repair Organizations Act. That's really established to protect your rights as a consumer. It wants to make sure that credit repair agencies and really any type of credit reporting is done honestly. And of course, if you run into a scenario where you feel a company is trying to advise you against a fee or is trying to advise you negatively, you have the ability to report them. And that's just the one scam I want to bring up when we talk about credit. Yes, there's a lot of scams around people trying to get into your credit report, trying to get into your credit history and applying to credit in your name. But there's also a lot of pieces to be careful for on the other side of a credit report, and that's when you're trying to fix or repair. A lot of people are so nervous about their credit score that they take very dramatic measures to try to improve their credit. And any time that you run into a company that says, hey, I can remove all your bad credit, just pay us an upfront fee and we'll make sure it's all taken care of. We'll negotiate on your behalf. We'll make sure that all these credits disappear. Just pay us a fee up front and we'll do this all in less than a year. When it sounds too good to be true, trust your gut. Very likely you're going to run into a scenario where somebody is trying to, on a credit repair scenario, on your credit history scenario, trying to get you to provide information that is simply not true. They most of the time offer information that is too fast or too expensive to be considered worthwhile. We'll talk about some other credit scams, unfortunately, in the next section, which comes up in a few minutes. But there's the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. There's the Financial Coaching Association of America. Also, again, on the website, both on M&T Bank's website, as well as resources with the Commonwealth. There's a lot of information that can guide you to reputable companies. If you or somebody you know has had difficulty with their credit or with their credit reporting, you'll have the ability to access them and ask them for professional information. And I'm happy we spent some time on that piece because it sounds like all of you have a good idea of how to get your credit score and how to get your credit report. So that's how you would dispute information or maybe help, again, your elderly associates that need some help. Lose less than 30% of your available credit. Do not max out your credit cards. These are some strategies to help improve your credit if you're looking to get a better score. Pay your bills on time. If you can pay your bills each month in full, do so. Pay off your loans on time. Do not apply for multiple loans and credit cards at the same time. Have one, build up a history before you move next. If you were able to participate last week in our first webinar, we talked about budgeting and we talked about how creating a savings plan really can help with debt management and debt reduction, which then also frees up a credit card if you would need it for any type of emergency. And following that savings plans will really give you good sense, not just of savings, not just of your monthly expenditures, but also on credit rebuilding and payments. But most important in this section, review your credit report, especially now that it's possible to do it on a more often, more regular basis, and other credit card companies also give you access. There's nothing wrong with you yourself checking your credit score. So go ahead, look at your report on a regular basis, make sure it remains accurate, at least once, or at least quarterly, I would recommend. Same thing with your score. Make sure that your score doesn't have fluctuations all of a sudden. When you look at your credit report yourself, it's called a soft inquiry, just like when existing companies take a look, or just when you get those pre-approved offers in the mail. None of those will affect your credit score. You can look at your own credit report as often as you like, at your own score as often as you like. And there's even companies out there now that are adding additional pieces to help boost your score. It's actually called Credit Card Boost, where you can add some of your regular payments to your credit history online to get a better score. All of that is great. All of that will not hurt your overall score, will not hurt your report. It just shows more and more people that you have the history and the ability to pay back an item on time. A lot of credit reports are starting to look at rent history. So if you're somebody who pays rent, I'm one myself up in Swampscott, you have the ability now, your rent is paid through a reporting agency or to a transfer agency to have that added to your credit report. So there's lots of ways to build your credit report in a way that is more advantageous for your score. Just make sure you look at it on a regular basis. Quick summary. That was really a quick little 20-minute lesson on credit scores and reporting, and then I apologize for running through it so fast, but hopefully you've seen how a credit score is built, what entails the details of a credit score. We talked a little bit how you can understand information about your reports, where to find it, and if there's any type of incorrect information, how you can then claim where to find that information. So it was kind of quick, and I do want to reiterate that we're always available to you as an additional resource. If you have additional questions, my email is available both with OEE and the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. Feel free to email me if you have any specific questions around credit repair or credit scores, and we can definitely be an additional resource for you. And that brings me to our next topic, which is a little more scary, unfortunately, and that's identity theft and scam protection. So when we talk about credit reporting, that's also one of the main items that unfortunately we see thieves. And so in the workforce, in the personal atmosphere, there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of identity theft, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of scams where people are targeted both for their credit history, for their credit scores, and where people try to access bank information. And this is specifically important when we talk about the elderly population. They're just targeted because of their somewhat trusting nature, unfortunately. They're often targeted for credit and identity theft scams. So I think it's really important. I'm happy that you take the time to spend some time with us and learn about the different scams that are available. In the next half hour, we'll talk about some signs of identity theft. We'll talk about some different type of scams and fraud that are out there. Hopefully give you some strategies to protect yourself and give you some information on how to protect your data. But again, there's other resources available to you. So just like with the first topic, we're going to start and make sure you're still all fully with us and do a little poll question. True or false? There's a victim of identity theft every 2 seconds, a victim of identity theft, not just somebody trying to get access, but an actual victim every 2 seconds, true or false. And you are more likely to have your identity stolen than to have your car stolen or your home burglarized. Probably a little bit easier, true or false. How much do you know about identity theft? There's a victim every 2 seconds. You're more likely to have your identity stolen than have your car stolen, true or false. Quickly going to look at this chat, thank you. All right, let's close out the poll. Oh, did I miss that? There you go. True and true. You guys are all with me and very much aware. Awesome, appreciate it. 100% right. And I probably shouldn't be smiling because it's kind of sad. There's a victim of identity theft every 2 seconds. So not only which means that people are trying to access somebody's identity on a much more and a much regular basis, because many people have some type of awareness around identity theft, but there's a victim every 2 seconds where somebody has their identity stolen or taken advantage of. I just want to quickly mention there's 2 different ways of identity theft and or identity fraud. When you talk about identity fraud, that's specifically when somebody's personal information is used to access money. So in a fraud scenario, somebody specifically is trying to get after your finances directly, looking for a way to access your money and your finances. Much more common, unfortunately, is identity theft, where personal information is accessed not even directly for financial gain, but for other methods to then in the future get access to somebody's identity and use that for gain. And the effects are quite impactful, right? And unfortunately, it happens way too often, where somebody could lose out on a job opportunity because their identity was stolen. They had to borrow money, had to use my savings to pay for expenses because I couldn't get any type of credit because my identity was stolen. I had to reach out to friends and families for assistance. In our budgeting workshop, we talked about how important it is to include your social circle if you're trying to save money for specific goals. It's the same, unfortunately, if you've been a victim of identity theft or identity fraud, very often you need to reach out to your social circle. And especially in the elderly community, we find that the elderly are maybe embarrassed, might not want to share that they've been a victim of identity theft or identity fraud because there's so much information around prevention that they kind of feel embarrassed if somebody was able to take advantage of them and stole their identity and committed fraud. And also because often friends, families might be part of the abusive circle. Unfortunately, we talk about in our senior citizen workshop, we talk a lot about the opioid problem. And an elderly might have a family member that unfortunately has an addictive problem, is looking for funds, and is reaching out to the grandparents or knows that the grandparents might have some money saved and uses that as a way to access money, which again leads to some embarrassment that maybe the elderly population doesn't want to share that they were victims. Another effect of identity theft is that you have to request for government assistance, and that's both a good and a bad thing. It's never good to request government assistance because you were a victim of identity theft, but it is a good way to introduce all the different resources that are available to the senior citizen population or your own friends and family. Trying to avoid becoming a victim, let's make sure we talk about some resources that are available to you even beforehand to help protect you or to help make your life a little bit easier. So obviously thieves, when they steal your identity, used it to make transactions, open new accounts, and commit fraud, especially online. I think the same thing is happening again.
Yep,
Yeah,
definitely.
we just lost you again.
There must be something coming in this fog. You also just muted on there. Just give you a moment to catch that. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, of course.
If we need to pull up the backup presentation, definitely can. Oh, there's your volume.
I think I'm almost back. Sorry. So strange that it happened twice.
At least we can hear you now.
Well, that's better. Most people might just want to see it and not hear me. Let's see.
There we go. Back up.
All right. My apologies for that, everyone. So this is where we were at. How are thieves using your identity, making transactions, opening accounts, committing fraud? What we see more and more, especially with the elderly community, is that there's fraud around receiving prescriptions and trying to receive medical treatment. So again, you want to not only look at bank transactions, you also want to look at insurance bills. You want to look at bills that explain the benefits that were received and make sure that there's nothing all of a sudden that comes up where either you and your family or the elderly population truly had no attention or had no access to work on a medical scenario, and all of a sudden you receive bills or you receive information that bills were not paid. It's not just financial data that is personally identified information that is being stolen. Biographical data, medical data, biometric, anything on that list, from social security number to name, birthday, and address and driver's license, down to email address, personal checks, credit cards, insurance cards. There's a lot of information that frankly is public where thieves will go after. And it's important to understand that it doesn't mean that you have to try to hide your name and your birthday and your address. That's public information. When it comes to identity theft, it's sharing the combination of some of these records where really people can get into trouble. If I only have your name and your birthday and your email, by itself, I can't do that much. And I'm in sales, it's very easy for me to find somebody's email address because they're normally pretty standard information. But if now also I'm able to combine that with a bank statement that shows last transaction history, or I'm able to combine that with a copy of a driver's license that I pulled from somebody's computer, or somebody dropped their credit card and I used what they call a skimming machine to receive some of that credit card information. Now that I have a combination of all this information, I might be able to get together and start stealing somebody's identity. So theft is a very common way, stealing somebody's wallet to get information. There's a lot of resources shared around dumpster diving, where we tell the population to be careful with statements, to be careful with documents, and make sure you shred them, because thieves literally will go into somebody's trash and try to pull information out of somebody's trash. Shoulder serving, when you're standing in line at a grocery store and you bring out your debit card and you forgot your PIN number, or you type in your PIN number and somebody looks over your shoulder, or you pull out a piece of paper that has bank information and somebody looks over your shoulder. Be careful when you're in public that nobody is around you or in a public space, either looking at your Wi-Fi information and or worse, looking at some information that you are sharing directly. Mail fraud. We talk of budgeting. We talk about the importance of automating everything. We're going to talk about it next week when we talk about how banking can be done online and how important it is to be automated when you look at your bank records. Mail and paper statements are a very easy way for somebody to try to get access. And last but not least, because we hear it more and more, skimming. If you walk up to a machine and use your debit card to pay for an item, and you notice that the ATM machine or the debit machine is wonky, it wiggles, it moves around. There's thieves now that actually add different type of readers to standard ATM machine, even inside banks, to try to get your debit card information. I personally have a card that has that little logo. I can just wave my card at the machine to pay for things. One, I feel really cool, but it's also actually safer than pulling in your card into a machine that could be scanned. So a lot of different ways that these guys try to get information that you can prevent, because most of these theft, dumpster diving, shoulder, mail fraud, and skimming are where you physically are interacting with either a piece of paper or a person to get information. But I want to talk about a few scams that have to do with phishing, telephone, and the elderly that you hear about a lot and that you also need to prevent and share with your elderly if you can. First and foremost is the phishing emails. We've talked about phishing emails for 20 years, and it is still one of the most common ways for someone to be hacked and have their identity stolen. Opening up an email that seems to be from a financial institution with an attachment, with a link, asking for some information, and for some reason accessing that link or opening the attachment. Please share with your family, share with all your resources, share with your elderly population. No bank, no financial institution will ever send an email or a text where they're going to ask you to click on a link and confirm your identity or move to another space or open an attachment. Now, a lot of these emails have red flags where you can see misspellings, generic readings, unprofessional language. But the key piece to remember, never ever should you click on a link, never ever should you open up an attachment that asks you to go to a different piece on your computer. It gives the thieves access to information on your computer. It gives the thieves access to folders on your computer, to your browsing history, to bank information. You just don't want to go there. So if you get an email you don't recognize, simply delete it. The best thing to do, if there's an email or a text that looks very authentic, close the email, call the bank. Hey, did you guys just send me an email? Is there something I should be aware of? Instead of responding to the text, call the sender. Hey, is there something I should be aware of? and use the phone number on the back of your card, use your local branch, whoever you know directly, contact them and find out if there's something you should be aware of. Never, ever respond to an email or a text with a link or attachment. And again, you've heard this many times. Your senior citizens are going to say they've heard this many times. Just this weekend, I was talking to someone who opened a free gift card that was sent to them, and they lost $10,000. Fully educated, fully aware not to do these type of things, but it sounded so good, and they ended up doing it. So just be aware. Phone scams. Again, for the elderly population, my in-laws do this all the time. And even though I ask my mother-in-law, please, please, please don't pick up the phone every time there's somebody, sometimes it rings. Congratulations, you won the lottery. I know you never entered this lottery. I know you have nothing to do with the lottery, but somehow we were able to determine that you are a winner. Yay. Now, the money's going to be sent to you. And of course, you're not going to provide me with your bank information. I understand that that's the type of fraud that is very prevalent. However, to avoid some of the taxes and to avoid some of the fees that come with sending you all this money, would you mind just paying for those fees? It's only $1,500, and once we receive that, we can release the $1,000 to you, or the $1 million to you. So not only do thieves try to get bank information, and a lot of the elderly are aware not to give that, but they're then actually flipping it around and saying, no, I don't want your bank information. I just want you to send me the fees so then I can release the money, which seems more plausible. And for some reason, if there's some good social interaction, we see this happen. We see people come into the bank all the time wanting to wire out money, and once it's wired, it's gone, to receive winnings for lotteries that they might not even have participated in. Another more common scam is when a friend of a family member gives them a call. Hey, I'm on vacation in Mexico with Johnny. Johnny got in some trouble and we need money for bail. And he's too embarrassed to call his parents, so he gave me your phone number. Would you mind helping out your grandson and then just sending us some money? My mother-in-law loves this because she only has granddaughters. So every time she gets a call about her grandson, she actually entertains the conversation right till the end when she goes, ha ha, I don't have a grandson, and she hangs up the phone. She thinks it's funny. She thinks it's great. I'm somewhat nervous because it just means that the thieves now know that she likes to talk on the phone and they might try a different trick. But it's a very common scenario. Again, we did a senior citizen workshop, and 3 of the 9 people in my first class had experienced this call, where somebody would say, there's a family member in need. Would you please be able to help them out directly? They're in trouble and we don't want to embarrass them. So create awareness that this likely will not happen. And I was asked, how do these thieves know that Johnny is in Mexico? And I have 2 teenage daughters. They spend 95% of their life on their phone with Instagram pictures, sharing where they are, what they're doing, how things are done. It's quite easy for a thief to look for Dutch Kolthoff, find myself on LinkedIn, look for Dutch or Maurice Kolthoff now and see that he lives in Swampscott. I'm not sharing anything you can't find on your own. There's not that many Kolthoffs in Swampscott. So all of a sudden when you search on Instagram and you find my daughter's name on Instagram and you see that she was in Washington, D.C. last week, that's all the information you need to now contact Dutch's grandparents and be like, hey, Marina, my daughter's name is in Washington, she's in trouble, let's make this happen. So it's a very quick way of accessing information that the internet now allows thieves to do, and we just need to be aware and share that with, unfortunately, we need to be aware and share that with everybody so it can't happen. This one happens to me all the time, and you might see it yourself. Text scams, UPS, Amazon, your bank, all send you information that seems very reliable. You can travel up and down my street for 2 weeks, and you notice probably 10 out of the 14 days there's going to be a package at my front door. So once you know that information, why not send a text and say, hey, Dutch, your next package is going to have some trouble being delivered. Please click on this link so we can make sure that we have your correct address information. This is your bank. There seems to be some unauthorized transaction on your account, so we had to block your card. Please click here to verify your account and we can release it again. I get an email all the time, and what's interesting, the sender of the email is somebody I know. So when I hover over the actual email address, it's a completely different person. But when I look at the email in my spam box, it shows up as somebody that I know. Hi, I remember we had such a great time. Remember this picture? You look so happy. Click on this link to see the picture. I'm very aware of where I've been socially, what pictures are being taken. And again, I teach financial education for a living. I know not to click on any links, but it is possible for thieves to imitate people from your contact list. Once they've accessed your phone records or once they've accessed some of the records that are out there, again, LinkedIn is probably a good example. It's easy for them to access your contacts of people you should know and use their name to send you an email or a text that makes you go, strange that these people are email or texting me. Well, let's take a look. The moment you have that feeling of, this is strange, is when you should pause and just kind of make sure before you decide to open anything. I have two separate emails. I have one email I only share with my friends and contacts, and then I have my spam email. Most of these show up in my spam email, but it is amazing to understand that thieves have the ability nowadays not only to look at somebody's contact list through social media and come up with names. I've gotten phone calls. I've gotten texts from my own phone number. Right? I have a 954 phone number because I live in Florida, and most of the time when somebody's trying to commit fraud or trying to get information, it's a phone number from Florida. And again, sometimes I've actually gotten a text from my own phone. So just be aware, be diligent. There's a lot of information of what people are trying to do to get access to your finances. Child identity theft is more common, where they now start using people as early as 12 years old to start applying for credit or bank accounts. Tax identity, medical identity. This slide is just a reminder that most of the identity scams are not just focused on bank records anymore. There's a lot of information out there in the world that thieves can use. And medical identity theft is something you really should bring up with the elderly population. Prescriptions, Medicare, medical insurance. If they have access or if they use any of those services, you need to protect their information and take a good look at their bills. If all of a sudden you notice an incorrect medical bill or incorrect medical history information when you go to your doctor, if on a regular basis you expect a statement to arrive in the mail and all of a sudden it's not coming up, it's lost. If you get denials of services, denials of credit card applications, if you get unusual calls from debtors, unusual calls from insurance or banks that normally didn't happen, and these are reputable calls saying, hey, we're just checking to make sure everything is okay, it might be time to pull up your credit report. It might be time to take a good look at your history and make sure that nobody had access and is trying to get money from you. In the after COVID world, the IRS offices were closed for a bit. There's a lot of government money that was circulated. Thieves jumped on that and were making phone calls specific to the elderly, stating that they were from the IRS, stating they were from Social Security, asking to make sure that their federal money would be received correctly, to please provide information over the phone or via email. Again, no reputable company, no government agency will ever reach out to a person and over the phone ask for information to be given. So these are some red flags that are unfortunately still happening on a regular basis. And even though we communicate and even though we talk often about identity theft and scams, every 2 seconds there's a victim. The elderly lost $3 billion last year, billion with a B. Unfortunately, these things still work and people still have access and still have the ability to take money out. So monitor, monitor, monitor. Practice safety. Share how you are protecting your safety. Be aware and secure your important documents. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Don't use unknown links. I think I've mentioned this before. Am I going again?
Yep, we lost you again.
Yeah, we lost you again.
You are also muted.
Unmute. I thought it had to do with the chat, but it didn't. So no, I figured it out. A little late, but we're almost at the end. I appreciate your patience with all this.
Perfect.
I'm
Back
back?
up.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, figured it out. Thank you both. I think I've mentioned this before. Don't open links. Don't open attachments. It's still the number one reason. And if there's anything you've learned from today, is please make sure that you share with everybody not to open links. I'm going to switch it back to the credit reporting a little bit. And I mentioned early on that at a certain point in life, hopefully you don't need to access your credit report and don't need to use credit as often. So what are the things you could do? And that's something I recommend with the elderly population. Not only can you monitor your credit accounts and pay, or in some cases for free, have a monitoring service, but you can also set up a freeze on your credit report. right? Where nobody can access your report, nobody can apply for credits. You can apply for credit unless you really unfreeze it again. But it might be a good way to make sure that your credit report is protected. You just reach out to a credit agency and ask them to put a freeze on your report if you know that you don't have any credit needs coming up in the next, let's say, year or so. Another great way when we talk about automation is alerts. So we talked last week in budgeting about how you can set alerts for your bank activity. You can also set fraud alerts. If there's any time is somebody's accessing information that they shouldn't, the financial institution can send you a text or an alert saying, hey, we're just making sure this was you. So don't be angry. That means that your card initially might have a decline for an unusual transaction. It's just the bank trying to be safe and letting you know that this is unusual. Is it suspicious? If not, well, let's go ahead and make it happen. So there's ways that you can protect yourself if there is an issue. After identity theft, things get a little more difficult. You have to collect all your data. You have to report it to the FTC, to the different departments of law enforcement, and then fixing and repairing damage just takes some time. So hopefully we've given you enough information to prevent being a victim of identity theft versus once you have been a victim and the different steps you need to take. Every person that has been a victim of identity theft unfortunately knows that it takes some time and it's a lot of data that needs to be collected because most banks and most financial institutions and most agencies feels that there's a lot of information that we give and share around prevention, but there's still a lot of victims. So there is resources to help you. I know that most of the banks I've worked with have a identity theft repair unit where they try to step-by-step assist you as much as they can, but it does take some time. It's doable, it's workable. Everybody will do what they can to make it as easy as possible, but hopefully you're never in a situation that you're physically a victim. Which kind of makes me wrap it up. So we talked about some signs of identity theft and fraud, different types that are out there. Hopefully gave you some strategies to protect yourself from theft and fraud. The main strategy truly is just being careful, right? Don't share or don't make it possible for people to easily have access to information. I know we record some of these sessions, and my mother-in-law will not like the fact that I keep bringing them up, but I don't like that they talk to too many people on the phone. I don't like that they keep every piece of paper that is sent to them on their pool table and look at it and ask for information on it. Unfortunately, we're in a world, and especially for senior citizens, it might be hard to understand. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of new information. There's a lot of digital information out there in the world that thieves have access to. And it's better for them to kind of secure their circle when it comes to sharing information versus continue to be as open and as trustful as they were able to be 20, 30 years ago. It's a sad sign of the times, but unfortunately, that's the best way to protect yourself is to understand who you're sharing information with and to be careful with it. It ends our workshop today, and there is an exit interview if you wanted to follow that. Again, there's a lot of resources available for you online, both with the Office of Economic Empowerment and the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. And next week, we have another workshop, which is around mobile banking. What are the different ways that financial institutions are making it easier for you to do your banking, to look at your banking, and really to never have to walk into a branch again if you don't want to. A lot of great information to help you with that. That's next Wednesday. I do have a few minutes left, so if there are some specific questions that people wanted to ask that I would be able to answer, I'd love to do so. And again, we're also a resource for you afterwards if it's a little bit more personal, or if you're like, no, this is something I just want to kind of share on my own, we can do that as well. And I appreciate the people that have done some chats. Any specific question coming up? Let's take a look. So my email, I'm going to put that in the chat. Oh, actually, you can email Empower. Thank you, Jessica, but also we'll put my email in. hkolthoff@mtb. And there's also a question if we're going to share the slides. Those are going to go out into the community.
I can definitely say that we are recording this session. So that means that you all can go on the YouTube channel and see this later, which means that I will send that link to you in the follow-up email.
Just don't tell my mother-in-law.
I want to share the link with Dutch's mother-in-law.
Excellent. Thank you for the feedback, Felicia. Again, there is also an exit interview if you wanted to just complete the survey once we hang up. And I think Jessica is going to mention that. So I appreciate your time, and I hope that we're going to see you again next week, and I'll hand it back to Jessica.
Yes, thank you all so much for coming. Please, again, as Dutch said, if you could, when they hit exit, the survey will pop up. Excuse me, I meant to say empowerment at tre.state.ma.us to reach out with any questions, not empower, although we do love empowering folks financially. Feel free to sign up for next week's sessions. If you have questions about that, definitely email us as well. And I know we had some inquiries about hosting a scam and fraud workshop for your communities. I can send a link to that in the follow-up email as well, if that's something you're interested in doing. But thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Dutch. We've triumphed over technical difficulties, and we will hopefully see you all next week. Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.